To really understand something as huge and terrible as American slavery, you have to look past the dates in the laws. You have to see the human cost. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive deep into the personal story of Frederick Douglass to see how the system wasn't just about controlling people's bodies, but about trying to unmake the person inside.
Douglass kicks off his story with this just stunning comparison. Think about that for a second. He's not just saying people forgot their birthdays. He's making an accusation. This quote tells you right away that slavery was a deliberate, calculated project to strip people of their humanity, starting with the most basic fact of their life. And that's the thing you gotta understand. This was no accident. Denying someone their birthday, their age, that was a tool. It was the very first step in the process of turning a human being into a piece of property. So let's break down what that actually meant. For Douglass, this wasn't just some missing trivia. He called it a source of real unhappiness. Can you imagine? He'd see white children who knew exactly how old they were, who had this basic piece of their identity, and it tormented him. He was constantly asking himself, why was he denied that simple privilege? It was a constant, painful reminder where he stood. I mean, look at this contrast. It's like two different planets. For white children, knowing your age was part of being a person. It was a marker of your humanity. But for enslaved children, being ignorant of your age was part of the deal. It just reinforced the idea that you weren't a person with history, you were an asset. Your life was measured by seasons, planting time, harvest time, not by years.
And this is the man who came out of that system. The little boy who was denied a birthday would one day escape, teach himself to read and write, and become one of the most powerful voices for abolition this country has ever heard. His life is just an incredible testament to the strength of a spirit that simply refused to be erased.
But the theft of identity went even deeper. It struck right at the heart of the most fundamental human connection we have, the bond between a mother and her child. Douglass says this was just a common custom. Before a baby was even a year old, they were usually taken from their mother. Now, why would they do that? He figured it was a deliberate strategy to blunt and destroy the natural love between them. See, a child who doesn't know a mother's love has weaker roots. They're easier to control and easier to sell. 12 miles. Just let that number sink in for a minute. This wasn't a quick walk down the street. We're talking about a serious, exhausting journey.
And this journey just shows you the incredible love and grit of his mother. After a whole brutal day working in the fields, she would walk that entire distance in the pitch dark just to lie down with her son for a few minutes while he slept. And she had to be back before the sun came up or she'd be whipped. These tiny, stolen moments were everything they had.
And here it is, the brutal result of that system. When his mother died, Douglass was only around 7 years old. And because they had been so effectively kept apart, he writes that he felt almost nothing. The system had worked. It did exactly what it was designed to do. It had turned a son into a stranger to his own mother. It's just an absolutely soul-crushing thing to read.
Okay, so we've seen the psychological cruelty. Now we have to look at the physical violence that was basically the engine of this entire system. Douglass had a name for it, the logic of the lash.
And the key here is that this wasn't just random anger. As Douglass describes it, the violence was systematic. It was a language of terror and power, designed to beat obedience into you and crush any tiny spark of resistance, from the day you were born to the day you died.
Douglass lays out the whole chain of command of cruelty. At the very top was his master, Captain Anthony, a man Douglass said was hardened by a lifetime of owning people, and who actually seemed to take pleasure in whipping a slave. And enforcing his orders was the overseer, Mr. Plummer, a man Douglass describes with pure disgust, a savage monster who was drunk, profane, and always armed. This is one of the most haunting images in his entire book. His childhood mornings didn't start with birds singing. They started with the screams of his own aunt being tortured. He describes the master whipping her until he was too tired to continue, whipping her to make her scream, and then whipping her to make her stop. That was the soundtrack to his childhood.
But you'd think it couldn't get worse, but there was another, even more twisted layer to all this cruelty. And it was reserved for a very specific group of people, the master's own children. So imagine this impossible situation.
These children were a living, breathing reminder of the master's infidelity, so they earned the special hatred of the mistress of the house. Douglass explains that to keep his wife happy, a master would often have to sell his own flesh and blood. Or even worse, he'd have to stand there and watch as his white son tied up and whipped his own black half-brother. It's just perverse. So after everything we've just gone through, the stolen identity, the broken families, the nonstop violence, you have to ask, how could anyone survive that? Well, that's maybe the most remarkable part of Frederick Douglass's story. What did survive? And this right here, this is the whole point. There was this entire system meticulously designed to put out his inner light, to crush his will, to make him something less than human. And yet, somehow, a core of hope survived inside him. He described it as a gift from God, like ministering angels in the dark that told him deep down that he would not be a slave for his whole life. The life of Frederick Douglass really forces us to confront these huge questions, doesn't it? His story shows us the absolute worst of a system designed to destroy a person. But at the same time, it reveals the unbelievable, almost impossible power of human hope to not only endure, but in the end, to win.